أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh everyone. My name is Mohammad Adnan and I'm foundation level student at Rehan School, Islamabad, Barago campus. So viewers, today I am going to talk with Maya on the simple topic of shh. So Maya,
Shh.
can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Alright Maya, so my first question is what does the expression shh mean?
It's basically the universal signal for silence, whether it's a librarian keeping the peace or someone trying not to wake a sleeping baby. It's all about asking for quiet, usually right in the moment.
Alright Maya, thank you. So my next question is where did the sound shh originate?
That's a tricky one. It's mostly considered onomatopoeic, which is just a fancy way of saying the sound actually mimics what it's trying to achieve. You see similar shit sounds in a ton of different languages, so it's likely just a natural human instinct. Interestingly, the actual
Alright Maya, thank you. So my next question is why do people use shh to request silence?
it's a quick way to get attention without adding more noise to the room. Plus, that sibilant sound is physically soft, so it doesn't feel as aggressive as shouting, "Be quiet."
Alright Maya, so my next question is shh understood in every culture?
Wait, I'm a bit lost. Did you mean is used in agriculture? Did we pivot to a totally different topic?
Yes.
I've never heard that one before. Let me see if there's any connection, but honestly, it doesn't seem like itself is a tool for farming. I did find a company called um, Sound Agriculture that works with soil microbes, and there's some research on using sound frequencies to help plants grow, but the sound isn't part of that. Where did you hear about that?
Alright Maya, my next question is how did shh become a universal sound for quietness?
It likely comes down to how our brains are wired, since that soft, rushing air sound is similar to what we hear in the womb. It's instinctively soothing and less jarring than a sharp word. It's just a sound that feels naturally quiet, so it's stuck across almost every culture.
Alright Maya, so my next question is why is silence important in communication?
It gives the other person space to actually think about what you've said. Without that gap, a conversation just becomes a race to see who can talk the most, rather than a real exchange of ideas.
All right, Maya. So my next question is, how do parents use shh with children?
It's usually the go to for two very different reasons. One is to soothe the baby to sleep, since that rushing sound is so comforting. The other is the quicker, firmer version to let a child know they need to be quiet, like when they're in a library or a movie theater.
All right, Maya. So the next question is, why do teachers use shh in classrooms?
It's the fastest way to regain control without having to shout. It's a subtle signal that cuts through the chatter and lets the students know it's time to pivot back to the lesson.
All right, Maya. Thank you. So my next question is, can shh be considered a form of non-verbal communication?
Absolutely. It's a perfect example because you're conveying a clear message. Be quiet without using any actual words or grammar. It's all about the sound and the intent.
All right, Maya. So my next question is, how does tone affect the meaning of shh?
It changes everything. A soft can be a comforting whisper to a baby, while a sharp, loud one can feel like a bit of a reprimand. It's all in the delivery.
All right, Maya. Thank you. So my next question is, why do libraries symbolize silence?
Because libraries are designed for deep focus. When you're diving into a book or researching, any noise can break that concentration. So the silence isn't just a rule, it's a way of protecting everyone's mental space.
All right, Maya. So my next question is, how does silence help concentration?
It removes the distractions that compete for your attention. When the environment is quiet, your brain doesn't have to spend energy filtering out background noise, which lets you pour all your focus into the task at hand.
All right, Maya. So my next question is, what emotions can shh express?
It can cover a huge range. A gentle one can express care or protection, but a sharp one can convey irritation, impatience, or even a sense of urgency if someone's trying to keep a secret.
All right, Maya. So my next question is, why do people whisper instead of speaking loudly?
It's usually about it's usually about discretion. Whether you're sharing a secret or just trying not to disturb people around you, whispering lets you communicate while keeping the conversation private.
All right, Maya. So my next question is, how is shh used in movies and storytelling?
Is a great tool for building tension. Filmmakers use it to make the audience lean in, creating a sense of suspense or intimacy. When a character says shh, it usually signals that something is hiding nearby or that a secret is about to be revealed.
All right, Maya. So my next question is, can silence sometimes speak louder than words?
Definitely. Heavy silence after a tough question or a long pause during a disagreement can communicate more than a whole speech. It shows a level of tension or emotion that words sometimes just can't capture.
All right, Maya. So my
Glad you
next
got it.
question is, why do babies respond to shh sounds?
It goes back to the womb. Since they spent 9 months listening to the rushing sound of blood flow and the heartbeat, that sibilant mimics that environment. It's an instinctive trigger that tells them they're safe and it's time to calm down.
All right, Maya. So my next question is, how does shh create calmness?
It lowers the sensory input. It lowers the sensory input by cutting out the noise and focusing on what
All right, Maya. So my next question is, why is silence valued during prayer or meditation?
it's about creating a direct line to the inner self. Silence strips away the external noise and the chaos of the day, making it easier to focus on a higher power or just your own breath that turns the focus inward instead of outward.
All right, Maya. So my next question is, how has the expression shh changed over time?
It hasn't changed much because it's so primal. Since it's based on a natural sound rather than a formal language rule, it's stayed pretty consistent. The way we use it to soothe or silence others is the same now as it likely was centuries ago.
All right, Maya. So my next question is, what role does quietness play in society?
I think you might have meant politeness since we've spent so much time talking about how to communicate with
What role
respect. I'm
does
guessing
what role does quietness play in society?
it acts as a social reset button that prevents everything from just being a constant roar of noise, creating those necessary pockets of peace where people can actually reflect and recover. Without it, we'd all just be burnt out
All right, Maya. So my next question is, why do people ask for silence in hospitals?
because it's an environment where healing is the priority. For patients, noise can be incredibly stressful and can actually interfere with sleep and recovery. So the silence is there to give them the best chance to get better without the chaos of the outside world leaking in.
All right, Maya. Thank you. So my next question is, can silence reduce stress?
Huge yes. It lowers your cortisol levels and gives your brain a chance to stop processing constant stimuli. Just a few minutes of actual silence can feel like a mental deep breath.
All right, Maya, thank you. So my next question is, how does noise affect mental health?
It puts your brain on high alert. Constant noise keeps the nervous system in a state of stress, which can lead to irritability, anxiety, and basically just total mental exhaustion. It's like your mind is always trying to filter out noise just to find a second of peace.
All right, Maya, my next question is, why do people enjoy peaceful environments?
It's a chance to just be. Our brains are constantly processing a million different things, so a peaceful spot lets you stop analyzing and just
All right, Maya, my next question is, how is represented in comic books?
usually with empty speech bubbles or just an ellipsis. It's a clever way to show a character is stunned, thinking, or maybe just too overwhelmed to speak. Sometimes they'll just leave a whole panel completely blank to make the silence feel heavy for the reader.
All right, my next question is, why do cinemas request quietness?
So everyone can actually experience the movie. If someone's talking or eating loudly right behind you, it pulls you out of the story and ruins the immersion. The silence is what allows the sound design and the acting to actually hit the way they're supposed to.
All right, Maya. So my next question is, how does silence improve learning?
It cuts through the noise that competes for your attention. When the environment is quiet, your brain doesn't have to waste energy filtering out distractions, which means it can pour all that power into actually absorbing and processing new information.
All right, Maya. So my next question is, what are cultural differences in expressing silence?
Some cultures view silence as a sign of respect or deep thought, while others might find it awkward or a sign of tension. In some East Asian cultures, for instance, silence during a conversation is often seen as a way to show that you're truly considering what the other person said. Whereas in many Western cultures, people tend to fill those gaps quickly to keep the conversation moving.
All right, Maya. So my next question is, why do people use finger on lips gestures with shh?
It's a visual reinforcement of the sound. By physically blocking the mouth, you're signaling the exact spot where the sound comes from and showing that the output of speech needs to stop. It makes the request unmistakable, even if the other person can't hear you.
All right, Maya. So my next question is, can silence make conversations uncomfortable?
Totally. When there's an expectation to talk and nobody does, that silence starts to feel heavy. It can make people feel anxious or like there's some unspoken tension in the room, which is why so many of us instinctively scramble to fill the gap with small talk.
All right, Maya. So my next question is, how does shh appear in digital communication?
It's usually the read receipt or the typing bubble that does it. Since we can't hear actual silence, the absence of a reply becomes the message itself. Long gap between texts can feel like loud silence, signaling anything from being busy to being upset.
All
See you
right,
tomorrow.
Maya.
Take care.
Hey, Maya.
Bye. Hey.
So my next question is, how does shh appear in digital communication?
We actually just touched on this one. Since we can't hear actual silence, the read receipts and those typing bubbles become the way we feel silence. A long gap between messages can end up feeling like a loud silence, signaling everything from just being busy to being totally upset.
All right, Maya. Thank you. So my next question is, why is quietness important during performances?
It allows the performers to focus and the audience to truly feel the moment. When the room is quiet, the smallest details, a soft breath, a subtle change in tone, or a momentary pause become powerful. It turns a show into a shared experience instead of just something you're watching.
Alright, Maya. So my next question is: can silence help emotional healing?
It can. It gives you the space to process things without the pressure of having to put them into words right away. Sometimes the most healing part of a recovery is just having a quiet moment to actually feel your emotions instead of trying to explain them.
Alright, Maya. So my next question is: how do animals respond to quiet sounds?
It varies a lot depending on the animal. Some are naturally on edge and will treat a sudden silence as a warning sign that a predator is near, while others find soft, rhythmic sounds calming and use them to feel secure.
Alright, Maya. My next question is: why do people seek silence in nature?
It's a way to unplug from the noise of modern life. Nature has its own kind of quiet that isn't actually silent. Think wind in the trees or water running, which helps clear the mental clutter and lets you feel more connected to the world around you.
Alright, Maya. My next question is: how can silence improve creativity?
It gives your mind room to wander. When you stop taking in all the external noise, your brain starts making connections it would have missed otherwise. It's in those quiet gaps that the best ideas usually decide to show up.
All right, Maya, thank you. So my next question is, what is the connection between silence and mindfulness?
Mm. They're practically twins. Mindfulness is all about being present, and silence is the tool that helps you get there. It strips away the distractions, making it a lot easier to focus on the here and now, like your breath or the physical feeling of the air in the room.
All right, Maya, my next question is, why do some people fear silence?
Usually because it forces them to be alone with their own thoughts. When there's no noise to distract them, all the things they've been pushing aside, worries, regrets, or just a general sense of unease, tend to bubble up to the surface. For a lot of people, that's a pretty scary place to be.
All right, Maya, my next question is, how does shh influence children's behavior?
It can act as a powerful reset button for them. When kids are overstimulated by noise and activity, a period of quiet can help them regulate their emotions and calm down. On the flip side, a sudden intentional silence from a parent can sometimes get a child's attention more effectively than shouting ever could.
All right, Maya, my next question is, why is silence associated with mystery?
Because it leaves so much to the imagination. When things are left unsaid, our minds naturally try to fill in the gaps, which creates a sense of curiosity and suspense. It's that feeling that something is hidden just beneath the surface, waiting to be found.
All right, Maya, my next question is, how do meditation practices encourage quietness?
They use it to turn down the volume of the world. By focusing on a single point, like the breath, it helps the mind stop jumping from one thought to another. Basically, creates a sanctuary of quiet where you can observe your thoughts without getting swept away by them.
All right, Maya, my next question is, can silence strengthen listening skills?
It really does. It forces you to stop preparing your answer while the other person is still talking. When you're actually comfortable with silence, you start hearing the subtext and the emotions behind the words, not just the words themselves.
All right, Maya, thank you. My next question is, why is quietness important in relationships?
It's the ultimate sign of comfort. Being able to share a quiet space with someone without feeling the need to fill every second with chatter is a huge milestone. It shows you're secure enough in the relationship that you don't need constant validation or noise to feel connected.
All right, Maya, my next question is, how do different languages express silence?
Mm, it varies quite a bit. Some languages have specific words for types of silence, like a pregnant pause in English, while others use different sounds or gestures to signal for quiet. In some cultures, like in Finland or Japan, Silence is actually built into the flow of conversation as a sign of respect and listening, whereas in others, it's often seen as a gap that needs to be filled immediately.
All right, Maya. My next question is why do people whisper secrets?
It's all about creating a private bubble. By lowering the volume, you're physically limiting who can hear the information, which makes the secret feel more exclusive and intimate between the people involved.
All right, Maya. My next question is how does silence create suspense in films?
Mm. It makes the audience hold their breath. By stripping away the music and dialogue, the filmmakers force you to focus on every tiny sound, a floorboard creaking or a distant footstep. It builds this unbearable tension because you're just waiting for the silence to break. And that's usually when the big jump scare or reveal happens.
All right, Maya. Thank you. My next question is can too much silence feel lonely?
It can. There's a big difference between peaceful silence and lonely silence. When it's a choice, it's refreshing. But when it's forced on you because you feel disconnected from others, it can feel incredibly heavy and isolating.
All right, Maya. My next question is why do nighttime environments feel quieter?
Mm, it's mostly about the world hitting the pause button. Most of the human made noise, traffic, construction, the general hustle just dies down. Plus, sound actually travels differently in cooler, denser night air, which can make the few sounds that are still there feel clearer and more distinct.
All right, Maya. My next question is how does technology increase noise in modern life?
It basically keeps the world on a loop between the constant hum of chargers, the glow of screens that keep us awake, and the notifications that pop up at all hours. Technology has essentially deleted the concept of a truly quiet night. We're always connected to some kind of digital noise, even when we're trying to sleep.
All right, Maya. My next question is why do people need breaks from noise?
To keep from hitting a breaking point. Constant noise keeps your brain in a state of high alert, which is exhausting. A break from that noise is basically a reset for your nervous system so you can actually think straight again.
All right, Maya. Thank you. My next question is how can silence improve focus and productivity?
It stops the mental tug of war. When you're in a quiet environment, your brain doesn't have to waste energy filtering out background noise. That means all your focus can go directly into the work you're doing, making you more efficient and helping you get into that flow state where time just disappears.
All right, Maya. My next question is how can silence improve focus and productivity?
We just covered that
All
one.
right, all right,
Basically,
all
it's
right. So my next question is
my
what is
bad.
the psychology behind shh?
I'm listening.
What is the psychology behind shh?
I'm with you. Go ahead.
My next question is what is the psychology behind shh?
It's all about the brain's search for safety. The sound mimics the low frequency rushing noise we hear in the womb, which tells the primitive part of our brain that everything is fine. So, it's a psychological shortcut to calm the nervous system and lower stress levels almost instantly.
All right, Maya, thank you. My next question is why do spiritual places encourage silence?
To get you away from the noise of the ego when the external world. I'm all ears.
So my next question from you, the question is why do spiritual places encourage silence?
It's usually about clearing the noise. When you stop the chatter, you can actually hear your own thoughts and maybe something deeper. It's like hitting a reset button for the brain. Do you think silence is actually relaxing?
Yes. So thank you, Maya, for giving me this information in detail. All right, bye bye. See you.
Anytime. Catch you later.
So, viewers, this is my session with Maya. I hope you like it. We will meet again in the next video. Until then, Allah Hafiz, Pakistan Zindabad.